as I've mentioned earlier, Rembrandt also creates the return of the prodigal son. Now, the Calvinist rule against idolatry did not prevent Rembrandt from creating religious works. It just changes how he does it. Now, although they were not devotional religious paintings in the Dutch Republic, paintings like this did bring prestige to the artist. After all, religion paintings and history paintings were seen as the highest form of art that an artist could possibly work in. These works were interpreted by the artist in terms of human as opposed to lofty theological terms. He's boiling it down to looking at human drama, very similar to what Caravaggio does, but he's eliminated a lot of Caravaggio's technique. So, for example, we don't see really muscular people involved. We see something much, much simpler. He's much more willing to add things to the background, whereas Caravaggio might just have a black background or a curtain or something that's ambiguous and prevents us from getting a sense of deep space. However, he does use light to great effect in this case, using light to point the viewer to the aspects of the painting that are the most important. So this piece is the contemplation of human action, of the soul, not the heavenly tumult of the Italian Baroque. The work portrays the son begging forgiveness and being embraced by his father. For those of you who may not be familiar with the prodigal son, the story is that a father has two sons. One demands his inheritance at a very young age before the father's passed. The father says, "Fine, go." The son takes that inheritance, spends it all, and then comes back begging forgiveness for having done such a really foolish thing. The other son argues against his return, of course, feeling that this isn't really appropriate. But the father seeks to forgive the prodigal son, and that's what we're seeing here, that act of forgiveness. The son having shown up partially shod, so one shoe missing. And as we look at it, bring up my favorite little pen tool, we see that his clothes are falling apart. We see the shoe missing, or at least maybe around the ankle, partially there. We get a sense of a man who has lost everything. The father is welcoming him back into the fold with this sense of the hug. Nothing here would be idolatrous. After all, there's nothing you would really pray to. You wouldn't be begging for a miracle from an image like this. Meanwhile, we see various men on the right who are observing this. We see one man who appears to be maybe a monarch or someone of great power, one of the middle class, and one who could arguably be a depiction of the working class or poor. In other words, this is not a class struggle. This is Rembrandt saying this is a lesson that can be learned no matter what your social class. You don't have to be particularly wealthy to run into these issues. After all, the story is about forgiveness, not about what you do with your wealth. Light also becomes the guiding factor through the work. The light that shines in, coming in from behind the viewer and to the left, tells us where we're supposed to look. So we're looking at the brightest possible section, this area here with the father and son. The light then fades as we move across. Of course, you want to think about the wealthy man because he's the one who's going to be most struck by the similarities of the story to possibly his own personal situation. But you'll notice that light fades as we move across. In other words, the poor working class may not have the wealth issue, but they still have to be involved in the act of forgiveness. So the use of light really moves us through the piece, and this is what Rembrandt is known for in part. So here, Rembrandt's style is perfectly in line with the simple eloquence of the biblical passage, which he has taken and simplified. And you can imagine someone like Caravaggio or someone else in Italy creating something of great pomp and circumstance. The young man may be muscular with the shirt torn so that we can see his body. The father may be wealthier than what we see here with jewels and everything else. Figures all over the place that are getting at the same ideas as Rembrandt, but perhaps better dressed, better built, any number of things. Here he's gotten rid of all of that. The simplicity and minimalism of the composition is key to understanding what he's doing. Add to that his use of light, and you have a truly intriguing painting.